I wanted to create a little video of how to analyze a primary source document using a popular TV show that's on right now, at least on PBS, called Atlantic Crossing. I don't know how many of you have watched this or even know about it, but it's supposedly about the Crown Princess of Norway who had to travel to the United States during World War II when the Germans occupied Norway. And she got to know Franklin Roosevelt, the president. She was married, and according to the series, there was some kind of romantic relationship between the Crown Princess Martha and FDR. Now, historians are screaming out loud that this is so much nonsense that there is no evidence of any such romantic relationship, and this raises a very serious question. How much violence can you do to history? How much damage can you do? How many lies can you tell about history in the name of entertainment just because you want to attract more eyeballs to your TV show? But in this little video, I want to show you how you can analyze a primary source related to this topic, which I found on the internet at the Franklin Delano Roosevelt Library in Hyde Park, New York. Now, suppose we take a look at a particular document and try to figure out whether that document supports the conclusion that FDR had some kind of romantic relationship with the Crown Princess. Here's a document that I found dated February 12, 1941, and it is not signed by FDR, but we know from the other documents surrounding it that this was written by FDR. He's thanking them for sending him flowers around the time of his birthday. What kind of document is this? Obviously, it's a letter. Is it any of these other things? No, it's not a telegram, but it is a letter. Who wrote it? Franklin D. Roosevelt. For what audience was the document created? He says, "My dear godchild and Olaf." Well, Olaf is a character in the TV show. He's the Crown Prince. And you see that FDR has addressed it to their Royal Highnesses, the Crown Prince and the Crown Princess of Norway, at their home, Pook's Hill, in Bethesda, Maryland. He addresses Martha as "my dear godchild," and that's odd. Evidently, he had quite a bit of an affection for her, which may not be romantic in nature, and we can't draw any conclusions from this letter. He also seems to have a very good relationship with Olaf, although he can't seem to spell his name, and he thanks them for the carnations in a very gracious way. So that's one document. Let's take a look at another. Now we will look at another document. This one was also written by FDR to the King of Norway. The King of Norway was the father-in-law of Princess Martha and the father of Olaf, the Crown Prince. And this is in FDR's own hand, dated March 19th, 1941. And it's very straightforward. It talks about several characters, by the way, who are displayed in the TV series. He says, "I'm very happy to have your letter, which Mr. Hopkins brought over." And he's responding to a letter written by the king. And the king was telling FDR, and by the way, the king's letter is also in this material that you can find on the internet. He was responding to the king's letter when the king said he didn't think that the Crown Princess, Martha, should be visiting the western United States because he was worried that the Germans were making a lot of noise about how the Crown Prince and the Crown Princess had escaped Norway, not to stay there, but to go to the safety of the United States. And the king did not want Martha to be out front in the public too much, because that might make Norway look bad. And FDR says, "I had not meant to suggest that your children should make any formal tour in our West." But he says it's very important that in this country we keep the names of the occupied nations, occupied by Germany, constantly before our public. I say this because a strong public opinion for the restoration of the complete independence of the nations overrun by Germany will become of a special moment when the time for peace arrives. And he says, don't worry about the German broadcasts. What else does he say? He says, with your permission, I will, of course, continue to do everything possible in the way of advising your family. Their present abode, that's shown on the TV series, Pook's Hill, outside of Washington, is just large enough without being in any way ostentatious. And I hope that this summer we can make similar arrangements for them to go to a fairly quiet seaside place. The children especially should not spend the summer here because the climate is very enervating. If you've been in Washington, you know how hot it is in the summer. I hope they will all come to stay with us at Hyde Park in New York before they go to the seashore. And then he makes some other comments. And at the very end, he says, I hear from Canada that Olaf's 2 trips there did much good. He is a very fine fellow, and it has been very delightful to have him here. So this is a rather warm letter for someone who is just dealing with a royal family that's residing in the United States while the Germans are occupying Norway. FDR seems to know where they live, and he seems to have some kind of role in getting them that residence and making sure that they're comfortable. So that kind of adds to the mystery. It doesn't really answer the question of whether he had a romantic relationship with her. He doesn't seem to be in any way hostile to Olaf or in competition with Olaf. But then he adds a handwritten note, which is very unusual. FDR didn't usually write in his hand additions to letters unless he was very, very concerned with the letter and it was very meaningful to him. He says later, Olaf plans to leave later, and I am off today on a trip to get some sunlight in the south for my sinus. I am sure I will see him before he takes the clipper for Lisbon. You will open my speech about assistance in occupied nations. I do wish there could be more of it in Denmark and Belgium. Norway and Holland are doing well. We are thrilled by the raid on something islands. It's not clear what that is. Keep up the splendid work you are doing. Faithfully yours, Franklin Roosevelt. So he wanted this added to the letter. So clearly, FDR has a warm relationship with the Crown Princess and her husband, and in that previous letter he called her my godchild. It's hard to know what to make of that. So certainly these letters are not conclusive, but when you put them in the context of how he addressed other people more formally, it does continue to raise questions. It doesn't answer the questions, but it does raise them to a higher level, I suppose. And again, this is a letter. It was written by FDR. For what audience? It was the audience of the King of Norway. When is it from? March 1941, which means that it was during the time when Norway was overrun, but the United States was not yet in the war. And that has very many political meanings if you understand the history that surrounds this document. And that's another thing that's important to decode primary source documents, to know what was going on at the time it was written, which can tell you a lot about the purpose of the document. So I hope this helps you, and I know it will probably be more interesting for those who have seen Atlantic Crossing. But this is just an optional video for those who are interested in learning more about primary source documents. I hope you enjoyed it.